Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radeligion Broadcasting premiere podcast. Damn you, Hollywood. And here's your host. He's out there searching for Red October. He wants to play your Patriot games. There's a clear and present danger. Jack Ryan. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Winfrey. How do you do, sir?
Well, I'd like to say better than most of the movies you just listed, but that would be a bad. But I am way too old and washed to be better than those.
I like the joke that I made about Harrison Ford in those movies. Harrison Ford is dazed and confused.
I'm glad you feel proud about that, Mark.
I mentioned that a bunch. I also mentioned that a bunch of times when we did the Long Road to Ruin on that, which is back in the archives now.
Yeah, which you can check out in the back catalog as Mark frantically uploads old material because he's weird like that. Anyway, yeah, this is Damn You Hollywood. Tonight we're talking about the Amazon Prime feature starring Michael B. Jordan, adapted from a Tom Clancy novel Without Remorse, which is going to be a theme for how I talk about that movie.
I almost introduced you as he's got plenty of remorse, Robert Winfrey.
I do not for this. But joining us on this particular episode, we have a special guest. He stepped in to talk with Mark about the Netflix exclusive Stowaway, which I've heard quite good things about. But Jeff, I'm probably going to butcher your last name, Sloboda, is here with us again. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing okay, and you did okay with it. It's Sloboda, but I mean, it's all good. Believe me, I get worse renditions than that.
Long second, though, Sloboda. Gotcha. I will try not to do that again in the future.
No, you did all right.
All right. Well, Mark, you tried to get people to review this with you.
Yeah, this is Shadow and Bone. I've never heard crickets quite so loud.
And, Jeff, for some reason, you decided to jump on this particular grenade.
Well, I mean, hey, you know what? Like, I'm a really, I'm very much like the type of person where I come into movies with a certain expectation, a certain optimism, or like a lack of optimism, depending on, you know, what I've heard and what I've seen with the trailers and whatnot. When I saw the trailer for Without Remorse, I was really I thought it was awesome, to be honest with you. And so at that point, I went into the, you know, seeing the film kind of with an optimism. And, you know, of course, I'll explain later on during the show. But I mean, honestly, I walked away from my whole experience with it pretty satisfied.
Wow. That will be an interesting point of view to take. I don't mean that sarcastically. I'm genuinely looking forward to hearing you talk about it in that respect. So everyone knows the very brief story about how I came to be on this particular show. This was going to be Jeff and Mark. And then news dropped about Amazon trying to buy MGM Studios. And Mark and I got into a discussion. And ultimately, it's one of those discussions that requires more nuance than is capable via Facebook Messenger. So he said, there's no time on the schedule. The only time you could do it is if you talk about Without Remorse. And I said, sir, I don't bluff.
Actually, let's give this conversation the color that it deserves. He suggested we do this when we review Cruella next week, and we're going to have Alexis Hana on that show. And if Alexis Hana has to be on one more podcast where Robert and I push her into the corner and start screaming at one another, Alexis Hana may kill herself live on the podcast. So I struck that down, much to Alexis's appreciation. And there were no other movies we were discussing relative to the time that this was dropping. So I said, well, we could do it during our discussion of Without Remorse, at which point, like a child, I drew a line in the sand and said, I dare you to come on the show and talk about Without Remorse just so we can discuss the Amazon deal. And Robert Winfrey said, like Marty McFly, don't call me chicken. And then we proceeded to drag race into a Fast and Furious movie.
Yeah, that's a fairly accurate representation. So, Without Remorse, I knew this was coming out. I had no interest in it when it came out again. I'm only here to talk about the MGM proposed buyout by Amazon Studios. But I did watch the movie, because if I'm going to talk about the movie, I'm going to have to see the movie to review it in good faith.
You know, you didn't do that with Gem and the Holograms. You could have kept up your streak. Wasn't there another movie you also didn't see? Like, wasn't it you also didn't see Detective Pikachu and just let us talk about it?
I did that for a gag.
Okay.
I spent weeks anytime you mentioned Detective Pikachu pretending to have an internet connection issue so I couldn't hear you. I just wouldn't acknowledge its existence. And then when the show started, I went, wait, what is this thing?
Who do you hate more, Ryan Reynolds or Michael B. Jordan?
Don't make me choose.
Was Gem and the Holograms the only movie that we reviewed that you didn't watch?
I didn't. We did. Hang on, no. We did a split review for that. You talked Gem and the Holograms. I talked the latest Paranormal Activity on that review.
That is correct. That was like one of the few times we did a split review instead of a single movie. But wasn't there another one where you were like, "I'll listen to you talk about it, but I'm not going to see this"?
I don't remember.
Okay, well, we have been doing this for a decade now, so who knows?
I've got to give you guys credit. You watch a lot of movies. I mean, compared to me, you guys watch a lot. It seems like you guys really watch a lot of movies.
Yeah, I don't go to the gym much.
And there's so many I wouldn't watch if I wasn't talking about them.
Yeah, this is Robert's deal with the devil. All right, go ahead, Robert.
Which I don't actually get anything out of now that I think about it. Terrible deal. Anyway, the plot for this, we follow primarily the senior chief, John Kelly, a Navy SEAL, played by Michael B. Jordan. Our first introduction is him as a operative in Aleppo, so Syria,
Yep.
where they're rescuing someone, and it turns out they killed a bunch of Russians along the way. Because, of course, there's Russians in Syria. They were actually operating in the area at the time. But they didn't think there were going to be Russians there. There's some consternation. This leads to some period of time later, members of this particular SEAL team being hunted down and killed by Russian operatives. When they try to kill Michael B. Jordan because he's the protagonist, they screw it up, kill his wife and unborn child, shoot him a few times, and he gets a look at the only guy who survives on the enemy side. He later identifies that as a theoretical Russian agent. He goes rogue, attacking a couple of Russians, including getting into an accident at the airport. This movie I wish I knew this movie was set before 2001, because there's no way on God's green earth any of that happens in a contemporary international airport like the one in Washington, D.C.
Go on.
But he threatens this man with immolation, is somehow fireproof, I assume because he starred in the remake of Fahrenheit 451, because he walks through fire no problem, everyone else is deterred by this. Gets a name out of this Russian diplomat, is arrested because he committed numerous felonies, treason, and so many things. Anyway, he's arrested. They get him out of jail because they want to use him. He dumps exposition. He gets exposition dumped on him. They go to Russia. They're shot out of the air. But because the plot has to happen, they survive. They wind up in Russia. They find this last guy that Michael B. Jordan wants to kill. He goes there, and lo and behold, the man is wired up with explosives, going, "Yeah, I work for the CIA too. The whole point is to get you and me, or someone just like me and someone just like you in this position." He then has the smallest amount of multiple pounds of C4 detonation that I've ever seen in my life. That much C4, buddy, that whole building's going down. Not that room. The whole thing's a setup. Given that there has been some deaths of Russians in Syria and then deaths of Americans on American soil at the hands of Russian agents, if they can find dead American soldiers in Russia, that'll be all the excuse that the international powers need to go to war, and we'll get some military conflict between the United States and Russia, because they figure this out way too late, and in the middle of a firefight, because this has to be explained to the audience. Michael B. Jordan goes all action hero, which he is not very good at. Carves a way free for them, is himself rescued, confronts Guy Pearce, because it's always Guy Pearce. If you cast Guy Pearce in your movie, he's the villain. We all know this. So, of course, Guy Pearce, the secretary of something or other. He's some cabinet member. I forget.
Secretary of Defense.
The full-on Secretary of Defense. Oh, sorry. That became even less plausible. I thought he might have been like the Undersecretary of the Navy or something, but no, Secretary of Defense, instigating a secret war. Just bite me. That is such a stupid. Anyway, he gets him to confess on tape, drives them off of a cliff and drives them off of a bridge into the river where Guy Pearce drowns. Michael B. Jordan contemplates suicide via drowning, which is a terrible way to go, but is rendezvoused with by his last remaining friend from his SEAL team. They swim out. He gets a new identity and is sent off as the conspiracy is largely brought to light to the powers that be behind the scenes. And democracy is safe. The Russian Federation is safe. And Michael B. Jordan walks off into the train station for a potential sequel. Jeff, let me start with you. You said you came away from this largely happy with what happened. And you are the only person I know who has said something positive about this movie. That includes me, Mark, most of the reviews I've read, and 3 of my family members.
Well, hold on a minute. Now, I said I was satisfied.
Okay, fair. That's a fair point. That's a fair distinction. So you were satisfied with the experience. Please,
yeah,
I'm curious.
Yes.
Please do.
Now, realistically, I just want to put this out there right from jump here. Of course, I had to suspend belief multiple times throughout the course of the movie because of everything that you pointed out with the plot some of this stuff is just it's not conceivable. How he would have gotten out of jail, out of prison at all in a situation like that after what he did, it makes no sense. Of course I noticed the holes in the plot and everything and whatnot, but for what the movie is, in terms of it being just a straight up action kind of military flick. I honestly thought that for me, I thought Michael B. Jordan was, he seemed somewhat authentic at times. And then at other times, like you said, things got a little sloppy. Like when he went on the rooftop and went on that little one man, taking on the rest of the security or the cops or whatever by himself. That was not very well done. I didn't think, but overall for me, I say that I'm satisfied because I enjoyed watching the movie. I did find it enjoyable, personally, and again, you have to take it with a grain of salt. It's not an Oscar contending picture. It's a very simple, very basic action film, and at that point, from an entertainment standpoint. I like Michael B. Jordan. I'll be honest with you. Maybe I'm off on this, but I think he's actually a pretty decent actor.
No, Jeff, it's okay to like Michael B. Jordan. Most of Hollywood, most people who go to the movie think Michael B. Jordan just fine. People loved him in Black Panther. This is a Robert thing, and you will find if you do enough of these shows with us, there are at least a dozen Robert things. So don't feel don't feel like, oh my God, I like Michael B. Jordan. There's something wrong with me. No, it's Robert.
In defense of my position on Michael B. Jordan, let me state it very clearly for the record. I think he is a fine dramatic actor. I don't think he has a lot of range, but I do think he has depth and limited capacity. I think, for the record, that same categorization applies to, in very different roles, Jesse Eisenberg. Eisenberg doesn't have range. He's got about 2 things he can do, but he can do them with nuance and depth.
There's a lot of actors like that, like Michael Cera. There's so many actors. I don't want to derail the conversation with this, but Michael B. Jordan, Cera, Jesse Eisenberg, and dozens of others are very good in a very tight box. Outside of that box, they fall on their face, but in that box, they are very successful. They are believable and entertaining.
Yeah, I don't think Michael B. Again, people will disagree, and they can reasonably do so. I don't find him believable as an action star most of the time. What made it work more or less in Black Panther was, one, he looked better without his shirt on than Chadwick Boseman, which helped. Let me be very clear, that's not a shot at either guy. They were built physically differently for that movie. And most of the action sequences he takes part in that movie are either CGI'd, very badly in some cases, or a lot of car chase stuff. He doesn't do a tremendous amount of action stuff in that movie. And it works because he gets to play up his strengths, which is obstinate, arrogant, pretty boy, which is what he does very, very well in that movie. Here, where he has to show depth of range for grief, for anger, for betrayal, ostensibly stoicism at some point. Those aren't really in his wheelhouse. The scene where he has to like try and break down in the bedroom where his wife and unborn child were shot to death, it shouldn't be almost as funny as it was.
Yeah,
right.
most definitely.
I was going to say, let's go back to Jeff. I don't want to do too much on Michael B. Jordan, and then Jeff doesn't get to finish his points. Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. No, you know what? I agree 100% with that. That was very anticlimactic. The whole like supposed to be crying, breaking down scene or whatever. It just wasn't that believable. I mean, I agree with you. I do, Robert, in terms of what you talked about with maybe him, Michael B. Jordan being a little bit limited. And I really like mentioning Jesse Eisenberg and Michael Cera. I agree with 100% too that they're just very like compartmentalized, almost like type actors where they only fit in certain roles really and only work. But as far as Michael B. Jordan goes, I agree with you with Black Panther. I do. Everything you said I think was totally on point, and I totally 100%. I'm pretty much on the same page with you. I think that the whole Black Panther movie itself was way overblown in my opinion, in terms of how good the film actually was. I understand the cultural component of it and everything, obviously, but I think that overall, I felt like in Black Panther, just to put it out there, that I thought that Michael B. Jordan was okay as a villain. He wasn't that bad. He wasn't that great. In this action movie, I think you're right. It's kind of like hit or miss with him at times. Like some things he pulls off well, some things he doesn't. He's not believable in some aspects of the film, but overall, for me, for the length of the entire film, I felt like if I had to balance it, I felt like overall there was more positive that I got from him in the movie than like negative. And again, I think that's kind of like my attitude about the whole movie, to be completely honest with you, is just that like if I had to break it down 50-50, I'd say that like I liked it 60% compared to like not liking it 40%.
That's fair. Mark, what were your thoughts on this? I'm curious about your perspective because I struggle to find a good thing to say about the movie. The plot is it's not just overly contrived, it's like badly contrived, and you get these weird points of exposition dump. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you, Mark. Mark, you, if people don't know this, happen to work in a jail. Has anyone ever stopped a CERT team like that?
No.
Thank you.
No.
But it looked cool. It
did. It did look cool.
Okay, first of all, not to get too in the weeds with this, or real technically, but I have seen cell extractions. I have worked in 2 different county jails. I have watched a large man, larger than any of the deputies in some cases, be extracted from a cell. First of all, they don't go in one at a time like that, where it's kind of like the guy surrounded by swordsmen kind of a thing where he only fights them one at a time and they only go at him one at a time. I understand, like, how can they not go in one at a time? It's a doorway. Let me explain. That door opens, 5, 6, 7, 8 deputies are through the door before you can say tackled, okay? And they're going in. They're not going in disarmed. They're going in with, Robert, you're in martial arts, and I don't know, you've seen like kick pads before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They're going in, we call them crash pads, but they're the same thing. They're large kick pads. They typically don't use shields, though in one jail I did work in, there was a shock shield. So imagine 5, 6, 7, 8 deputies led by one guy with a shock shield that is charging into the room, and they don't stop. Okay? It's a rugby scrum. They just run the guy over. I've watched this several times. And then and hang on, that's 6, 7, 8 guys in the cell. Then there's usually a sergeant or a corporal in the back with a stun gun. Just in case. Superman.
And the person who's recording the whole thing for evidence in case you claim you were
there's cameras everywhere. And there's no one recording it. There are just cameras posted all over wherever it is this is happening.
I think you get more of the shields like that at like maximum security prisons than you do at jails.
Okay, well, like I said, I've worked in 2 different ones. In the one county jail, that particular sheriff, when asked why did we shoot the guy 1,000 times, he said we ran out of bullets. So,
Fair.
Y'all can look it up and figure out what jail I worked in. The second one, we're a kindlier, friendlier jail, and we don't do shock shields. I've asked. But I have seen 6, 7, 8 guys run into a cell, and standing in back of them is the sergeant or the corporal with the stun gun in case, again, Bull Moose happens to somehow get past 6 or 7, and I've never seen it actually happen. But in case he was able to somehow get through, and again, these cells are not like... In the movies, the cells have to be bigger or represented as bigger because you need space to move because there's going to be an action sequence in there. And and in terms of close quarters action sequences like Daredevil in the hallway, it's fine. In real life, the cells are about the size of an airplane bathroom. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little for effect, but they're not big. There's nowhere to go, especially when you have, and there's a bench in there. So just imagine... You have a toilet in the back, a bench on the side, and maybe 2 to 3 feet, if that, of space. And deputies are coming in shoulder to shoulder. There's nowhere to go. So no one. So your question, and I was a very simple one that I answered very complicatedly. But no, there's no way Michael Jordan kung fu's his way out of that cell. None.
Fair enough. So again, as for the. Moving on to the whole movie rather than just that scene, Mark, what did you think?
You and I talked before the podcast started, and I'm going to reiterate something I said to you. And something I said about Woman in the Window, because they kind of fell in the same place for me, even though they were 2 different genres. You and I had talked about movies that we now have access to that we might not have had access to before unless you, combed the video store. And maybe sometimes not even Blockbuster, but the local mom and pop video store for the off the beaten path VHS tape. I'm dating myself too much. Hollywood produces a lot of movies, more movies than people think. But as you know, when we do the money, and I read the box office, a dozen movies might get released, but it's 11 in limited release and 1 in wide. And they have their limited release. They're in select theaters here and there, in bigger cities than in small. And then they have their window for however long that used to be. It's not very long anymore. And then they go right to home video. And if you'll remember, if you're as old as I am, going to the video store, and you would find kind of B-grade or slightly higher than B-grade genre films. Sometimes they had a known actor in it. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes it was a lot of, nobody actors that can't get above the B level. And you and I had been having this conversation about we're almost coming full circle now back to that, but because of the long tail of streaming, movies that you never thought existed, back on VHS in the old video stores are now widely accessible via streaming. So we're getting not higher quality of movies, sort of adequate, halfway competent, entertaining, but not particularly thought-provoking schlock that's coming at you from all sides via the 97 different streaming services that are out there. And so that's kind of a long way of saying for an action genre...
If this movie were made 25 years ago, it would star Steven Seagal.
Yeah. It's in that Death Wish 5,
Boy, I wish I was dead.
That kind of a thing. Like I said, it's one of those movies where you would find it on a shelf in a video store somewhere, and it would have maybe one person you recognize and a bunch of nobodies, and you would be entertained for a night, but it's immediately forgettable. For a genre action movie, this is a dad movie. Pat and I talked about this, especially with the missing in action movies. The Saturday afternoon, sometimes you get a Western, sometimes you get an action flick. It's one of those where for us who do movie reviews, we have to think about these things critically. We have to think about craft, and so they don't survive under the scrutiny. But for 98% of the people who watch movies, they're not thinking about them. It's 2 hours to pass time. This movie falls solidly in the 2 hours to pass time category. It is adequately, at best, acted. It is not particularly well shot. It is dark. It is unreadable at times. It is the action is hard to follow. But again, if you're kind of just like passively watching, you get there are people dead at the end of a scene that were alive at the beginning, so you have at least a general impression of what's going on here. The plot is convoluted and up its own ass, but
oh god, the whole bit at the end about half this country thinks that we have to kill each other because they don't have an enemy, so we gave them an enemy, and we will start global. You could not have thought less about that motivation.
Well, it's a very wag the dog point that I'm sure was better made in the book, but Hollywood writers get a hold of a book, and they were like, well, general audience, and I talk about that all the time on here, and we're going to talk about it at length when we get to Cruella. Remember, most of the stuff we talk about on Damn You Hollywood is meant for broad general audiences. It's why I have to do the occasional, Reffin' Week. It's just sort of do, a palate cleanse. But that's the thing. Is it generic? Yes. I said to you offline, it kind of reminded me of, a 70s style blaxploitation action movie, minus the racist stereotyping of black behavior. They treat the black people in the movie just fine.
Hang on. I hate to phrase it this way because you might think I'm making some kind of racially insensitive comment.
Mm.
But it's a blaxploitation movie minus the fun.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, and I don't want to get into a whole lesson on blaxploitation, but Pam Grier and the guys that took on those roles, they took them on with aplomb, and they've talked. They talked about they were both good and bad for them, and there's not a tremendous amount of regrets, though some are a little more embarrassing than others. But they also recognized the time in which they were made and the audience they were made for. And there are people today that still genuinely treasure these movies. I mean, who doesn't love Black Mama, White Mama? Really, or Foxy Brown? Certainly Quentin Tarantino does. In any case, yeah, this is kind of a Truck Turner without the fun. Or that's not quite as incompetent as Dolomite Is My Name, or Dolomite, which is more hilarious than anything else. But in any case, it's just so we can wrap up and move this along. I'm in agreement with Jeff in that if you're just looking for a genre action flick and you want fun action and competent acting, line readings, that's all there. Where it falls down is a lot of the action sequences aren't well shot. But I mean, you made a joke about there's a boom mic in one shot. I didn't see that either. It is not a poorly made film. It's just an average, forgettable film.
All right, Jeff, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, listen, look, realistically, I agree with, basically everything that, you guys are saying. I wouldn't say that it's definitely, certainly not one of the better movies out of the movies I've seen recently at all. But realistically, again, I mean, I don't know. I'm a pretty optimistic, I'm not a very, pessimistic kind of person. And I genuinely try to find the good in everything that, that I see and interact with and, watch or whatever, and listen to. And I can usually always find something positive about anything for the most part, unless it's like the original Justice League movie or something, essentially, I guess for me, I think that probably, Mark, you're probably correct more than anything in that. Again, it's like a 2-hour filler movie. It's for 2 hours, it's tolerable, it's enjoyable, almost depending on the person, I guess. And it's definitely, I think that as an action film, of course, I would have liked to have seen them do more maybe with the other characters, the secondary characters. They had no arcs, and they gave us no backstory or information to really know who these people were. And then all of a sudden you've got the one SEAL that dies and says asks the guy, "Do you have children?" And tell my children I love them and everything and whatnot. It's like we don't know who the hell that guy is. So like it wasn't a poignant or powerful scene at all. Like it was completely like comical almost, to be realistic, like Robert was saying. It was funny to me. Like I was like I'm supposed to care about that? Like that's supposed to be like some kind of emotional, high or I don't know, whatever.
This almost feels like an Airplane-style parody, but it doesn't know it's an Airplane-style parody at times.
I mean, I was blown away by the plot at times and the story. It's convoluted as hell, like you were saying. It really is. Like, I mean, at times I was kind of just like shocked at the direction they were going. When the plane got shot down, I was like, seriously? Like, and they walked away from that too. I mean, again, it is interesting though. Like it is cool. I mean, all these scenes that I saw during the movie where I was like, that's not possible in real life. At the same time, they look cool. So like, I think overall probably, I don't know, maybe 50-50 people will enjoy the film and 50 won't, like if I had to say, I mean,
you're closer to being right than you think.
Well, I appreciate
I imagine the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is something like 55-56%.
40.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that's what I say. He's like, oh, I bet it's 50-50. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty close.
My final thoughts here. This is poorly written to the extent that it's written at all. The action sequences are spotty. Some of them work okay, in defense. Some of them do work okay. The opening one, when I watched it the first time, I was utterly nonplussed. By the end of the movie, I went, boy, that was probably the best action scene in this whole movie.
I want to ask you for a comparison.
Right.
With Josh Bernthal's Punisher being sort of the height of this that we've seen, how did you rate Michael Jordan being soldier posturing, holding the gun, shooting, all that stuff? Compared, like on the Bernthal scale.
It's not natural. It looks like he spent a couple of weeks training. Like he got pointers from people who know what they're doing. So it's a very obvious affectation in the sense that it doesn't feel natural. When you watch Bernthal and Punisher, or another really good one, when you watch Keanu Reeves in the John Wick franchise, that man has gone out of his way to do a lot of grappling and shooting training and whatnot so that what he does looks and feels natural. So when he's moving around like that with a firearm, that is everything he's doing is correct. And it feels like that's how he moves normally, partially because he does that in his spare time, which is a credit to him. Michael B. Jordan learned how to kind of move around with a weapon at points in time for a movie. It's not very natural, but he's doing. It's a little bit like watching someone sparring their like third or fourth time. Like they're doing. You can see that they're kind of doing the right things. They just look really, really mechanical. So he is nowhere near Bernthal or Reeves, but he's not. Who's a terrible one?
The Rock
Robert,
and Fast
have
Five.
you ever seen? Have you ever watched any videos or anything, or seen these like shooting schools they have, where they have the instructors, and they actually I've seen Keanu Reeves doing it, and they have courses, and he
does the outdoor speed shooting courses and whatnot, the tactical.
Yes,
mock.
that's exactly what it is. Yep.
Yeah, he does those a lot, and he's actually quite good. I don't think he's quite competitive level, but he's certainly better than, I haven't been to the range in way too long. He's better than I am, so let's put it like that. And again, kudos to Keanu Reeves for doing that, because it makes all of his action stuff look so much better. It's not always something you can easily pick up on, but if you don't have a very discerning eye. But even if you don't, you can look at the two things and you know there's a difference. So he's not the best by a long stretch, but he's also not the worst. There's plenty of times I've seen a lot worse than what he did here in that respect. His weapon, and I think that this is an issue of direction more than him, Like his weapon handling and some of the safety measures and whatnot, like the way he handles it is very, very wrong. But that's not wrong in the sense that he's doing something wrong. It's that he's directed to do something wrong. Like there's no point when you would drop that, when he would drop his weapon the way he does half a dozen times in this movie to pull out the handgun because it's more dramatic.
Right. That's why I wanted to ask you about it, because that's not a finer point that I would pick up on. But you and I have discussed Josh Bernthal sort of being, and as you pointed out, Keanu Reeves, as being sort of the high point of somebody in the dramatic field being able to properly hold a rifle and, go about shooting people in a room and stuff like that.
If you want a bad example, and I know he's done a lot of movies with longer weaponry like this, and I don't know why he's still so kind of mediocre at it. Mark Wahlberg should be a lot better at it than he is.
How much of that is your hatred of Mark Wahlberg?
How much of my hatred of Mark Wahlberg is based on the fact that he still can't carry a firearm properly?
Well, you tell me, sir. This is your therapy session.
I don't know. Again, that's kind of like cart and horse. Hang on.
I like the gun I do like that long weapon that he has in the film most of the time. I don't know what that was exactly.
Yeah, the one he gets, especially for the back half of the movie. I haven't seen it either. It's so I can't speak to the model, but I'm with you. It looks very cool.
It does. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about when they went to Russia or whatever. That I really enjoyed that. I was really wondering. I actually looked around a little bit to see if I could figure out what it was. But I thought it looked like it was very big, like a really big gun. And almost like I'm not a gun person really, so I'm not even going to try to imagine what it is. But honestly, I have to say that I definitely felt like he was more authentic in like the first couple minutes of the film with his handling of weapons and like his whole training shtick with I felt like he just kind of fell apart throughout the film, unfortunately.
Yeah, the longer it goes, like the reason you train the way that you do if you're in the police or the military is so that as your body breaks down and as stress mounts, you still have all the appropriate responses drilled into you. He doesn't come across like a SEAL the longer this goes. He comes across more and more like an actor. And that's just he's not alone in this particular critique. This has happened to a lot of people, but it's definitely something that is of note about his performance here. This is a badly lit movie more than anything else. I don't know why everything was so dark.
Yeah, it's a very muddy movie.
It makes everything hard to track visually, and unless you're doing that deliberately, and I have seen military movies that are badly lit, but it's done to deliberately try to recreate the stress of the situation and the environment that the movie's trying to portray. You just have to be consistent about that and actually use it to some degree, not just, hey, he's in his house at night, and everything's going to be very, very dark, and you won't be able to see anything. And then, you're not going to be able to see anything the next time he's in an action sequence. Like, oh, God. We do want to be able to track who's the hero and who's the villain at some point when we're watching this crap. My last thought, I suppose. I have never been so disinterested in an action movie as I was in this one. That when they got to the finale, the big action finale of your action movie, I could not possibly have cared less. I don't know. This is a failure of writing. It's a failure of direction. Those two more than anything else, but a little bit on the acting that goes along with it. This is a more or less badly constructed, badly executed film. I think you guys kind of hit the nail on the head when you equated it to the stuff that would go like direct to DVD or very limited release kind of stuff. And
you know what kills me about this? So we had this run of like, just because of the kind of stuff that we do, but like more of me just sort of saying, hey, this looks interesting, and it's turning out to be, just a nightmare. But at least when we talked about Vanquish had a style to it. You know what I mean? Like, Vanquish wasn't generic. Vanquish was someone overreaching and falling on their face. This is so generic that, Vanquish will stay with me just because it's bad, but it's like someone. It's like I always do like food comparisons. So someone goes and tries to make like a chef-worthy dish, and it's garbage. It's the kind of thing that gets you cut off from it, gets you sent home from Top Chef. But at least it's memorable, and they tried, and there was technique in there, and it didn't go the way, as it often doesn't on Top Chef. It didn't go quite the way they wanted it to, and it turned out it's a bad dish. But at least there's something there to talk about, as opposed to this thing, which is Hamburger Helper. Not everyone loves Hamburger Helper. Most people do. There's a reason why you can find it in every grocery store across America if you can find nothing else. It's easy to make. It's pretty bland, but it'll feed your family for cheaply, than most other things in the grocery store. So, like, Vanquish is a bad Top Chef dish. Without remorse, Hamburger Helper.
That's fair. All right, that's final thoughts. Oh, the last final thought I suppose I have. Mark, this movie's so generic. Final thought? This movie's so generic, I can't even remember the music.
Well, thanks for queuing that up for me, buddy.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of music to talk about, but music is a wonderful thing. I actually just saw Cruella today, and we'll talk more about that on Tuesday. But there was some awesome music in Cruella. I will be gushing about that on the review. And all of the music from Cruella, including some of the new stuff, but a lot of the old, or kind of reminded me of like Guardians of the Galaxy, which used a lot of popular music, which definitely pings things emotionally for people and makes them enjoy the music even more. That's a technique that's used. All of this music can be found on AmazonMusic.com, and as a matter of fact, if you use our link in the description at getamazonmusic.com/W2M network, you follow the link to where it needs to go, and you fill out you fill out the form, and you will get a free 30 days of Amazon Music. And you can stream unlimited, and you can check out new bands, old bands, bands you've never heard of, movies from soundtracks. You might even find the one from this one. I don't know. I didn't look because it was pretty generic. I wouldn't know what the hell I was listening to anyway. But for all the other music that's out there, it's just an endless, infinite stream of amazing music. You can find Galactic Kraken, Robert Winfrey. You talked all about that this week.
We did.
Yes, sir. So get AmazonMusic.com/W2M network to get a free 30 days of Amazon Music if you sign up for the free trial. And if you don't like it after 30 days, you can cancel. No fuss, no muss. All right. And with that, let's check out the news.
And now, I'm up at News Flash.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. We're going to be talking about the Amazon purchase of MGM and subsequently
proposed.
Well,
let's be clear about that.
It has to pass regulatory muster, just as the Fox deal with Disney did, and as also with Lucasfilm. But I can't imagine it's not going to.
Well,
we're all ready. Yeah, I haven't read the article yet.
Just let me put this out there when it comes to the proposal, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna get deep about this. There's a lot more that would have to go into this particular discussion. I'm pointing this out in the issue of putting it out there. Given the reach of Amazon already, there is an argument to be made about the government allowing this particular purchase to go through. I don't know whether or not that will change. I don't know whether or not any particular challenges will be upheld. My gut instinct at the moment would be that it does pass regulatory muster, as the phrase goes. But I am going to throw it out there that it just needs to be acknowledged. This might not. Amazon is a very, very enormous company.
If I'm the CEO of Amazon and this doesn't pass regulatory muster, I'm taking this all the way to the Supreme Court and pointing at Disney as the model of, you let them buy Lucasfilm and Fox. How are we in any way breaking antitrust laws?
Disney doesn't do a lot of the stuff that Amazon does.
Okay, this is going to get very in the weeds, so wrap up your initial point.
I'm aware of that, and that's why I'm not going any further into this other than saying there's getting some pushback from from some non-trivial politicians about this.
Hang on. Also, AT&T and Warner Brothers, which then also incorporates AOL and Time Warner. At some point, again, there's a Supreme Court argument to be made about precedent.
I'm certainly aware of that, and it on those two mergers in particular, those don't actually help the case that might be made, considering how poorly received those mergers have been.
Well, yeah, but again, if you're arguing legal precedent,
there's no legal precedent other than that it wasn't challenged. That's not the same thing.
Okay.
Look, again, that we're going to get too deep into the weeds on that. I'm just pointing it out. This is the proposed sale. It may or may not go through, but assuming it does, let's move on.
Okay. So, Wednesday, May 26th, it was announced. Now, before I even get into this, let me just say this had been in the works for a while. It was new news that it happened, that they made the actual purchase, and that it now goes to regulatory to see if it's antitrust or not. But months ago, there were articles saying MGM was looking for a buyer, and there were talks about would Disney end up buying it. I had in conversations both private and on this podcast network, I think I had said, boy, NBC Universal needs to jump all over that because they got nothing going on. Then the WWE thing happened, and now they got a little bit of something going on. But and then they did some stuff with other sports and shutting down NBCSN, etc. So I mean, but still, Peacock in the distance compared to Disney Plus and HBO Max and Netflix,
every other streaming service.
Yeah, and so so there was a lot of talk about who should buy MGM. Disney probably wouldn't be allowed to because they are skirting the line of antitrust. So then what's left is AT&T. AT&T, then underneath that Warner Brothers, and you've got CBS, Viacom, which is Paramount, Paramount Plus if you're just going by streaming services. And then, Netflix, obviously. So the conversation was well, who would most benefit from a purchase of MGM? And it was floated that Amazon was in the hunt for this, but it was one of many. Well, Amazon came out the winner, and so here's the details on this. And this comes from CNN. Amazon is investing even more heavily in its growing position in the entertainment world. The company announced Wednesday that it made a deal to acquire MGM, the home of James Bond and one of the most iconic movie studios in Hollywood. Rawr, says the Lion. The deal, which is valued at $8.45 billion, so almost $9 billion, gives Amazon an extensive library of film and TV shows that it can use to fill out its Prime Video content coffers. If you've already watched all the Mythicas and all of the, rated R, nudie cutie, hard body movies that are on there. And, of course, the Zombies trilogy. MGM has a catalog...
Why do I feel like you're talking about yourself?
No, doesn't everyone watch it? Jeff, 80s hard body movies? Hamburger the movie, Hot Dog the movie, Ski School. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, of course I do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Without question.
MGM has a catalog with more than 4,000 films and 17,000 TV shows, according to Mike Hopkins, who heads Prime Video and Amazon Studios. The real financial value behind this deal, this is a quote, is the treasure trove of IP in the deep catalog that we plan to reimagine and shut up, Robert, and develop together with MGM's talented team.
Keep going. I have to mute myself to laugh at that. Keep going.
Okay. It's very exciting and provides so many opportunities for high-quality storytelling, he added. CEO Jeff Bezos said that Amazon is really excited about MGM during the company's annual shareholder meeting on Wednesday. The acquisition's thesis here is really very simple. MGM has a vast, deep catalog of much-beloved intellectual property, Bezos said, and with the talented people at MGM and the talented people at Amazon Studios, we can reimagine and develop that IP for the 21st century. The two companies said that the completion of the deal is subject to regulatory approvals and other customary closing conditions. Again, they went through this. Disney and Fox went through this too. It took about a year. Even though streaming is a small part of Amazon's empire, the company has focused on becoming a more prominent player in the entertainment world as of late. For example, a highly anticipated series based on The Lord of the Rings is in the works, and actually already renewed for 2 and 3 seasons. Prime Video, which also features original and award-winning shows such as The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is tied to Amazon's immensely popular Prime program, which offers faster delivery and has more than 200 million paid subscribers. Those kinds of numbers make it a competitor to the likes of Netflix, which has 208 million subscribers. Although MGM's logo of the roaring lion, Roar, has played in front of some of Hollywood's most beloved films, including The Wizard of Oz, it doesn't have the deep franchise bench that other studios have. So why would Amazon want MGM? 3 words, according to CNN: Bond. James Bond. The studio owns a piece of the franchise, one of Hollywood's most famous film series. The Bond brand, which Eon Productions also controls, is more than a box office success story, racking up billions of dollars over the past 60 years, and is the author of all your pain, James. The films in their lead...
If only that were an actual line in that review, I would pop, but we both know it's not.
The film and their lead character also represents a lifestyle that branches out into all parts of the globe and pop culture. If Prime
I can't wait for all the branded Bond merchandise available via Amazon.
I can't wait for the next New York Times article that says Bond is a rapist, along with Pepe Le Pew, but I digress.
That's already out.
If Prime Video is the new home of James Bond, that's an alluring proposition for potential consumers. Plus, No Time to Die, the latest Bond film, is set to open this October, in theory. Away from the suave British spy, MGM also houses the franchises including Rocky, The Handmaid's Tale, which streams on Hulu, which is owned in part by Disney, RoboCop, Legally Blonde, which has a movie... Shut up. Legally Blonde, which comes out next... the third part, the actual third part, not the stupid direct-to-video third part, comes out next year. We actually have it on the DMU Hollywood schedule, Robert. I want you to know that. And the Epix TV network, which features such shows as The Godfather of Harlem and Pennyworth, which is a part of the DC universe. It's the Alfred Pennyworth prequel to Batman. A consolidating media industry. Another reason Amazon would want to acquire MGM is that the media world is consolidating at a breakneck pace. You ain't kidding, Buster. To compete with Netflix and Disney, companies need scale, and buying up content, networks, or studios is the best way to do that. The latest major media deal happened on Monday when AT&T announced that CNN parent company Warner Media would be spun off and combined with Discovery, which was a pretty big deal. The deal brings together a litany of brands under the Discover and Warner Media banner, including Warner Brothers, Discovery Channel, HBO, CNN, HGTV, and DC Comics, which is now being rumored to be sold to Marvel. Just the comics, not the studio. Amazon acquiring MGM may not be as earth-shaking as the Discovery-Warner Media deal, but it's still quite notable thanks to MGM's historical prestige and Amazon's reach and resources. But the simplest reason Amazon wanted to buy MGM is that it can afford to. The hefty price tag for the acquisition is of significant consequence for Amazon, one of the world's wealthiest companies. Amazon, which paid nearly $14 billion for Whole Foods in 2017, has a market cap of $1.7 trillion. So yeah, $9 billion, kind of a drop in the bucket for Amazon. Ultimately, the deal gives Amazon more content, a respected studio in Hollywood, and a stylish super spy that will only help it further compete in the ruthless world of streaming. Let me frame the argument that Robert and I got into, and then I have another article here that kind of goes into it, and then we can kind of kick this around.
No, Mark, I need you to justify the extended universe potential of the Legally Blonde franchise.
Well, what if Reese Witherspoon in the Legally Blonde franchise met the She-Hulk? All right.
You got nothing.
Legally Blonde, the series. Legally Blonde, the graphic novel. Legally Blonde, the movie franchise. Legally Blonde, the reboot franchise. I mean...
Did you even listen to that list of crap they spun off as stuff No, this can totally be a friend. No!
Listen, RoboCop has 3 movies proper to its trilogy and a remake. Okay? RoboCop has 900 billion comics.
Okay, I can't speak to the comics, but of the 4 movies, only one's any good.
I mean, I like the RoboCop remake. It wasn't RoboCop, but I like the idea.
You, sir, are a soft man when it comes to stuff like that, and you know it.
All right. So this comes from Observer.com. Amazon, maybe. By the way, Jeff, get used to this. This is mommy and daddy fighting on almost every podcast.
That's okay. It's entertaining.
Oh, good. Amazon may be overpaying for MGM, but does it even matter, Robert Winfrey? Does it? Ask Brandon Katz on May 24th of 2021. Last week, it was reported that Amazon was in talks to acquire MGM for around $9 billion. Much like a pack of judgmental high schoolers, the Greater Hollywood and Robert Winfrey ecosystem rarely agrees on anything. But that jaw-dropping total was largely seen as an overpay when news first broke. Okay, hang on. I got to stop reading this for a second. So the argument Robert and I got into, so I can get through this before you go into yet another spasm. When Robert was like, they probably overpaid, my reaction was, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. They hire, an army of MBA graduates to figure that stuff out, which I don't have, so I don't know. I know I can do comparative analysis. Lucasfilm went for $4 billion. What did we say Fox went for? About 70?
The Fox Disney thing was a lot more than just the studio aspects. That also included a metric ton of international distribution rights, which are worth far more than any of the the studio properties.
To keep the conversation simple, though, in terms of numbers, again, Lucasfilm went for $4 billion. Fox went for around 70. I don't even remember how much they said the Discovery Warner Brothers thing went for. So when it was thrown out there that it was for almost $9 billion, I was like, maybe they overpaid, maybe they didn't. There's a lot of IP to be had here. I wasn't willing to argue about that because that's a statistical analysis thing of which I don't have numbers to go on one way or the other. Seems to be, now reading the trades, you probably are right that they overpaid. But that's not the argument we got into. Your argument was if I remember correctly, they overpaid because the IP outside of James Bond is worthless, and James Bond itself isn't worth $9 billion. And
that is more or less my stance. Yes.
Okay, and I said you're a communist and a homosexual. No, I said
neither of which is true, for the record.
That is a Bloom County bit. In case anyone on Twitter is angrily using Grammarly to tweet at me now, stole that from Bloom County. No, and I said that the entire bench is not worthless. It probably isn't worth $9 billion, but it's not worthless. And certainly adding James Bond to that makes it a worthwhile endeavor. And then you and I just kind of went back and forth, and I said the limits of chat annoy me, and I don't want to do this now. So we'll have this conversation in a few minutes. Okay, moving on. Yeah, because we are living in the era of media mergers and consolidation where well-resourced tech-based companies are cannonballing into the entertainment industry and every company is reorienting itself around streaming, the rules of engagement have changed. Deal makers such as agents and finance folks have long attempted to lure the deep pockets of Silicon Valley to Hollywood, yet Netflix and Amazon decided to build their own studios, buying talent instead of companies. Lucas Shaw wrote in his latest Screen Time newsletter for Bloomberg, now Amazon may suddenly be changing course. MGM has long been positioning itself, this is what we talked about before, for a sale, with the repeated delays of Daniel Craig's James Bond, Swan Song, No Time to Die, muddying up those efforts. Despite several larger entities reportedly passing on the century-old studio, Amazon has used the pandemic to rethink its film strategy. The studio is leaning into a more mainstream direction with outside acquisitions such as Borat 2 coming to America and Without Remorse, as we just talked about. Studio head Jennifer Salk wants Amazon to become a home for mass appeal programming, the kind that Robert really enjoys, across film and television. Acquiring MGM's library at a price tag that is still relatively negligible for a trillion-dollar company helps in that elusive endeavor. The MGM catalog is fantastic, and if successful, Amazon isn't just acquiring existing films and television episodes, they are also acquiring valuable ancillary intellectual property rights and remake rights to thousands of titles. Thomas Hughes, the America CEO of Your, the global online content marketplace for premium film and TV rights, told Observer. MGM's 4,000 film library includes the James Bond series, Rocky and Creed, RoboCop, the Pink Panther films. They also feature The Silence of the Lambs, Four Weddings and a Funeral, The Magnificent Seven. MGM also has a footprint in television with 17,000 episodes. The studio is behind scripted prestige players.
You notice how they never really list what television shows they have? They just say, we've got a bunch.
Well, The Handmaid's Tale, Fargo, as well as a popular reality TV series such as The Voice, Survivor, Shark Tank, and The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Hughes sees the subscription business model of streaming as a sound one. The real issue, he explains, is what it costs to create content versus the content's value to the company paying it to create it. If a film costs $100 million to make, how many subscribers have to watch it on SVOD in order for the $100 million investment to generate an ROI? Which makes sense to me. From the outside looking in, it's difficult to say, but given the mountains of user data Amazon has at its disposal, it must feel confident that MGM's library can safely be plugged into that equation. And this goes on. So just to kind of speed things along here. All right, Robert. Why do you think, outside of James Bond, the IP, without being overtly negative, be objective?
Okay.
Rocky is a known thing. Creed 3 is currently in development and comes out next year. Legally Blonde has been in development forever and comes out next year. They're working on RoboCop stuff. Hang on. There's a lot. Let me finish my point. There's a lot of the IP cited in these articles and stuff I didn't even get to that actually has projects in the works or lends itself to, as they said, remakes, recreations, reboots, etc. So by virtue of the fact that they have these known things to make things out of, that even if they just throw it on the streaming service and it doesn't go to a proper theater, makes it valuable, inherently valuable, why would you negate that?
Well, you mentioned the Legally Blonde movie. That's
You're
allegedly
stuck on that.
Well, you brought it up. That's allegedly been in development since I was 4.
Okay.
That doesn't look. Being in development is code for. It covers such a giant breadth of potential stages that it doesn't actually mean anything in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Some moron could be sitting around writing lines of dialogue in between jerk-off sessions, and it's in development.
Okay.
Or we could actually have sets built halfway through, or we could actually have people cast, have sets scouted, and just haven't actually gone to the filming phase yet. There's a wide breadth of difference between those 2 points, and it could be anywhere on that spectrum, and it being in development is still technically accurate.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean anything absent anything else. Creed 3 is going to come out and probably end whatever trilogy they're trying to go for with that. The Creed films have been...
successful.
Aren't they trending down? I'd have to double check between 1 and 2. I could be wrong about that.
I mean, trending down and successful are not mutually exclusive, but I will look for
Also true. They've both returned successfully, I think, their financials, more or less.
All right, so Creed was made on a budget of $40 million, if you round up, made $173, so profitable.
Okay, profitable.
Creed 2 was made on a budget of $50 million and made more than its predecessor because Drago is awesome.
Okay, so trending up. I don't think they're going to get 5 movies out of that. I don't think Michael B. Jordan will stick around that long. So we're probably going to get 1 more, and that'll close that out. Then we have to factor in that Sylvester Stallone is probably not going to be around all that much longer, which means we'd wind up with some kind of crappy reboot, absent Sylvester Stallone.
According to a note that I have here, in addition, he announced the development of a Rocky prequel television series.
Go. I'm not going to say it. Look, Rocky has a little bit of goodwill still left. I think that goes away without Sylvester Stallone. I straight up do. You need him involved in some capacity to have any goodwill as it relates to that franchise if you're going to do it again. And no one cares about a Rocky prequel. Why?
Because everything gets a prequel now.
I know.
More on that Tuesday.
Okay, I know the answer to that. My why is more a philosophical, existential cry to the universe. I am aware of the logistics, but so you're going to try to do something with, I mean, really, a Legally Blonde reboot sequel. Reese Witherspoon is 60.
That's funny.
Yeah. Now she can mentor a younger Potsy Pepper Pants, whatever her name is in the movie.
Oh, I'm going to pay for that. I'm going to pay to see that, too, without
question. Reese Witherspoon mentoring a younger...
yeah, most definitely.
You and me, Jeff, there will be. Happily going to the Legally Blonde movies. They're great, by the way.
You disgust me.
I've never even seen one of the Legally Blonde movies. So
Oh, you haven't?
Save yourself. Don't do it.
No,
I'm not
they're
going
great.
to.
Look, nothing featuring Luke Wilson should be seen by anyone.
All right, get back to your central point.
Back to my central point. You have Bond, which is a known, provable franchise that is still going fairly strong. You have Creed, which kind of revived the Rocky franchise for a little bit. But there's a real obvious shelf life on the Rocky franchise at the moment. And I don't know how much goodwill that will have when Sylvester Stallone is no longer involved. Be that because he bows out or because he dies.
What if they remake Rocky, but Rocky is a Panamanian who knocks out a horse?
Stop. Just stop. They already did that. It's Hands of Stone.
Okay. For Jeff and anyone else's sake, that is my 88th Roberto Duran joke.
The Wizard of Oz. I hate to break this to everybody, but nobody cares about The Wizard of Oz. The original's a classic. It gets replayed at Thanksgiving for reasons no one quite knows or understands. They've tried how many times in the last handful of years to do something with that, and it's fallen flat on its face every single time.
Okay, I think Wicked is actually being made by Warner Brothers, and it's been delayed a bunch, but that's also allegedly coming out. Wicked is the musical that is based on the novel. Yeah, they've tried a couple of times with The Wizard of Oz. The James Franco film comes to mind. There's the
Boy, does it.
But I think just because the James...
Hold on.
Hang on. The
I'm
James...
not-
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm not saying that you can't spin something out of nothing. I'm saying you're taking a multi-billion-dollar gamble.
Okay.
Now, that's their money to burn on that particular risk. But just for the sake of argument, well, sorry, not for the sake of argument, for the sake of, let's look at the last, 7 years or so of MGM films that have been released. So let's go back to 2015. 15 was a good year. They opened strong with Hot Tub Time Machine 2, Hot Pursuit, Poltergeist, Max, Spectre, and Creed. Again, Spectre being the high water mark for the entire studio. Since then, we have nothing good. Let me read this to you, and you can disagree with me if you like, but this is my stance.
Okay, good or made money?
I'm talking quality, but boy, over the last 3 years in particular, do we not have money being made either.
That doesn't sound very good to me at all.
How to Be Single, Barbershop The Next Cut, Me Before You, Ben-Hur, which lost more money than a small country, Magnificent Seven remake, The Belko Experiment, Everything, Detroit, Everyday, Death Wish, Tomb Raider, Sherlock Gnomes, Overboard, Operation Finale, A Star Is Born, which I won't hold financial losses against because it was designed to win awards, and it did, The Girl in the Spider's Web, Creed 2, Fighting With My Family, The Hustle, The Sun Is Also a Star, The Addams Family, Valley Girl, and Wrath of Man.
Okay.
Is it any wonder this place went tits up?
For real.
All right. Adam, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
No. You go ahead and make your statement that you were going to make because I have a counter to this.
I was just going to say that I don't know. I don't really personally have any desire to see Wrath of Man. Like, I don't know. I guess we'll end up probably watching it at some point.
We were very positive on it.
Yeah, it just doesn't really. Truthfully, for me, that actor's films. I forget his name off the top of my head right now.
Jason Statham.
Yes, his action films don't really do anything for me.
Okay, so working backwards, right? 2019, The Addams Family animated, $24 million budget, $204 million box office. Winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The Sun Is Also a Star. Didn't make money.
I know.
Okay. The Hustle made money. $21 million budget. $21 million budget made almost $100 million box office.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so we're 2 out of 3 so far. Fighting With My Family.
I think technically made money.
It technically made money.
The issue with Fighting With My Family is how many ways the profit had to be split because of how many people went in on the financing. I doubt MGM was profitable on that project.
All right, well, it made 4 times its budget. just about.
Again, I'm just going to be doubtful about that.
Okay. Creed 2 we already talked about. That made shit tons of money comparative to its budget. 214 versus 50.
Yeah.
The Girl in the Spider's Web lost money.
Lost a lot of money. They wanted that to be a thing.
A Star is Born killed at the box office. Just murdered everything in its path. $36 million budget, made almost $500 million. That's like Marvel money. Like basic Marvel money, but Marvel money.
No, no Marvel movie will only make $500 million unless people will be fired.
My
over that.
point is, like, if your movie makes, generally speaking, if your movie makes $500 million, like, everyone's getting steak and lobster dinners, like, you know, as opposed to jumping out the window, which is a whole other conversation.
Apart from the Justice League movie, which barely made $500 million and definitely had people jump out of windows.
Well, again, Operation Finale lost money. We have more wins than losses here. Overboard made money, believe it or not.
How
Good God.
There's no way. No way.
I honestly don't see what it is about this catalog that would make them cause to make that big of an investment.
Well, clearly you don't see the value in the Overboard cinematic universe. I mean, this thing killed. $12 million budget, almost $100 million box office. Starring.
Where did that shit come from?
Starring two people I've heard of. This is amazing.
That only made money because of how low the budget was. That barely that made like about $50 million in the United States and Canada if you combine the two markets.
Okay, Sherlock Gnomes lost money.
And $40 million in other territories. I wonder how much of that was like India.
Sherlock Holmes lost money and got a sequel anyway. This is really weird. It was a $60 million budget and it didn't break $100 million.
No, Sherlock Gnomes was a giant failure, as was the Tomb Raider movie.
Well, we're getting to that. Tomb Raider, which is getting a sequel. You keep saying it's an utter failure. It made money, you jackass.
No. They did not make money on a $274 million return. The budget in this instance does not take into account marketing, which they paid for. There's no way they made money on that. That thing underperformed at every level. It was discussed as underperforming on every level. Everyone acknowledges that thing was a bomb.
And still managed to decide they were going to do a sequel anyway.
Sure, because they're desperate to franchise everything, as is everyone else.
Moving on.
Death Wish.
Death Wish, which you and I reviewed. Did not make money.
Not even close. Boy, not even close. That's bad. That's comical bad.
Every Day did fine. I mean, it didn't knock it out of the park or anything, but it made money.
That's almost too small to count either way. Like I won't even necessarily call that a win in my column. Detroit lost money. That lost money bad.
Yeah.
That legitimately made less at the box office than its budget. All
right, I'm going to skip up to Ben-Hur just because I want to hear Jeff laugh at this. So Ben-Hur, historically, had a budget of $100 million, made 94. It was the worst of big budget movies. It was like the worst performing movie ever. It was really funny. It made headlines.
For the record, the movie they followed that up with, the Magnificent Seven remake starring Denzel Washington and Chris Pratt, cost somewhere between $90 and $107 million. Only made $162.
Yeah, that lost money too.
That was not a good movie.
I wouldn't recommend watching it. No. So, point being, the hits they take are big hits for a lot of these. And
Poltergeist made money, and it absolutely is a franchise, and they could do a Poltergeist cinematic universe.
They can certainly try.
The Hobbit movies all made money. Dude, the last Hobbit movie made almost $1 billion.
Hey, look, there's a reason I said starting in 2015, and that's not because it's what helps make my point. It's because it's the most recent. Yeah, you go back to like 2000, the first half of the 2010s, they do quite well.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the American version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Cabin in the Woods. You've got Skyfall. You've got the 3 Hobbit movies. Like,
so here's what they have coming up. Right? So you're looking at the same list that I am. Look at this treasure trove, Jeff. Jeff, look at the exciting things we can talk about in the near future. We have the new Stallone superhero movie coming out next week. I haven't seen anything about it yet, but
that has spent nothing on marketing.
Yeah.
They seem to have buried that.
About it until just now.
Yeah, it's called Samaritan, and allegedly it's threatening to come out on June 4th. I haven't even seen tickets go on sale for it yet, and they announced tickets for the next Fast and the Furious re-release of episode 6. Something called Dog, starring Channing Tatum and Reed Carolyn. Snake Eyes, which my son saw the trailer for today. I mean, if you're trying to market to 7-year-old boys, they won. He can't wait for Snake Eyes. He thinks that's the best movie coming out. He also wants to see Shang-Chi. He got him back-to-back today. He was like, double feature, right? Snake Eyes and Shang-Chi. And I'm like, well, they're not coming out on the same day, but sure. Sure to be an Oscar contender, Respect, which is a biopic about Aretha Franklin, starring Jennifer Hudson. Come on, now. Candyman remake.
They are trying to go for Oscar bait. Whether or not they succeed remains to be seen.
And
Oscar bait's not a good thing anymore.
The wildly successful Addams Family franchise has a sequel coming out on October 1st. The aforementioned No Time to Die. I said Candyman.
I know.
And then we have another possible Oscar contender from Ridley Scott, House of Gucci.
Dude, Ridley Scott an Oscar contender in 2021 is not a thing. Just warning everybody involved.
A Paul Thomas Anderson movie, not based on a video game, allegedly, called Soggy Bottom.
That's a Paul Thomas Anderson. Wait, is that Paul Thomas Anderson or Paul W.S. Anderson?
Oh, fuck. I said Paul Thomas Anderson.
Those are two very different things.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking,
Hey,
too.
step on that right there. Right there. See the black thing? No, stupid. Over there. Oh, God. Jonas! There you go. Yeah, step on it. There you go. What do you need?
You said video game.
I'll talk to you about Paul W.S. Anderson later.
Okay.
And when you're a little older, we'll watch all the Resident Evil movies.
Do not show your poor child those movies. Just don't.
Okay. Can I finish my podcast now? Yes. Thank you. I said video games. He came running out of his room.
That sounds about right.
Cyrano, coming out December 25th, based on a Cyrano de Bergerac and a play, and that will be fine. A Sesame Street musical, $1 billion easily.
You'd like to think.
Come on, Big Bird the musical. That's what the world has been waiting for.
I'm just saying.
Will Amazon be releasing these films, do you think, the same way that Disney Plus is doing it and the other streaming, HBO Max is doing it? Are they going to be dual? Are they going to be in the theaters at the same time also being streamed?
Okay, so that's not a yes or no question, but I will answer you. So HBO Max is giving up the day and date as of 2022. They did it for this year because life was unknown in times of pandemic, but there was even a rumor that this was going to end once we got to Dune. They've since reneged on that, but they have already said 2022, all their filmed for theatrical release will be theatrical release, no more day and date. For those that don't know, and in case Jeff doesn't know, day and date means in the theaters and on streaming service same day. Everybody else, including Paramount Plus and Disney Plus, are doing case-by-case things. So some are day and date, some are day and date, some are premium day and date, some are not. It really is case by case and streamer by streamer. To answer your question in the most simple way possible, what Amazon has said is they are committed to theatrical releases for some things, but other things are going to end up on the streaming service. So like they bought Without Remorse for probably $1.50. They could have released that in theaters if they wanted to. They just chose to put it on their streaming service to beef that up a bit. Same thing with Coming to America. Coming to America was slated for a theatrical release, but they bought it. They could have done it anyway. I mean, the sort of transverse of this. Netflix bought Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead and released it in theaters. It only ran a week before it was on Netflix, but they did that. Nomadland, which ran exclusively on Hulu initially, also had a theatrical release. So it's not to be too in the weedy with you on this, Jeff, but it's hard to say. First of all, nothing is going to affect the 2021 slate. They still have to get approved by the U.S. government. So none of this is even going to take effect until 2022 at the earliest. Now, so like Tomb Raider 2, right? A movie that Robert is, chomping at the bit to talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
Tomb Raider 2 may end up not being a theatrical release, just as an example. That may end up on straight to Amazon Plus.
I honestly don't even think they make it at this point.
No, they will. They've got a Fiddler on the Roof remake coming up. They've got...
there's biopics for Richard Pryor and Sammy Davis Jr.
Yep. An Untitled Panther.
A
lot of that stuff may end up strictly on Amazon, Jeff. But then
much of that stuff might not even get made.
But on the other hand, they there are certain things that they know are going to hit in the theaters, and they'll leave them as theatrical releases, or they might do, like I said, like Netflix does, and do like a limited, like week-long release, and then it's strictly on the and not just Netflix. I've seen a lot of movies. They have a limited theatrical run for about a week or so. So like something breaking news in Yuba County, I think, was one where it was like in theaters for like an hour, and then it went straight to VOD. There's been a couple like that where they had very, very limited theatrical releases and then ended up on some sort of streaming service or paid VOD. So it's a case-by-case thing. The question remains, and we've sort of danced around it. We've sort of pointed and laughed, but we haven't really talked it out, is whether or not, and I want to get Jeff's opinion on this, because you and I, are sort of transfixed in our positions at the opposite ends of the ring. Jeff, I think the IP is valuable. May not have been $9 billion valuable, but, who cares? It's Amazon and they're worth $1 trillion. But I think that the IP is valuable. I think that this was a good purchase for Amazon, and that I think in the long run, this will beef up their service and benefit them greatly. And I look forward to seeing the kinds of things that they're going to put out there. What do you think?
I think you're right. I mean, I would definitely agree with you. I think that taking into consideration the big leap that we've experienced with these streaming services during the pandemic and everything and whatnot, I definitely feel like the things are definitely changing. I mean, I don't know realistically. It's kind of still for me. It's hard to really kind of say what things are going to be like in terms of films with box offices and the theaters and everything. My local theater right here where I live in Florida is actually closed right now. Still,
really?
So I mean, yes, it is.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd have to if I wanted to see a movie. I think I'd have to go to Sarasota probably to see one.
Okay.
That's where like my closest theater would probably be. But no, I mean, I think I agree with you 100%. I think that based on, I mean, I listened to the names that you mentioned, and I feel like there definitely were some films that you talked about on that list that you were reading off of that the profit margins based on like the budgets were actually really solid. Based on what you said that they have coming up, like for films that are going to be coming out and released, I mean, I don't really see anything in that really like does anything for me personally. But I think that overall, that in terms of market share and whatnot, and like competing with the other streaming platforms, I think this was a great move, probably.
So, Robert, the last thing I'm going to say here, and then I'm going to give you the final word, and we're going to close out this segment. Your contention that, I mean, do you think that Amazon shouldn't? Here was my point, and then I'll dovetail into giving you the final word. This is the point. My wife and I were talking about this, and my dad. We were all kind of having a conversation about this the other night. And the argument that I made was the standalone solo studio is going extinct. In the marketplace that exists now, the standalone studio cannot survive. You need to have multiple forms of revenue. So Disney being a really great example. Maybe they don't have a great film year, but their parks do better. And so, parks, merchandise, movies, television rights, streaming subscriptions. You have to have multiple sources of revenue in order to exist in the current marketplace. The solo, independent film studio just churning out movies is not going to survive. So I think you're gonna start to see more and more of this sort of thing as time goes on. That is my, you can sort of guffaw and scoff at the list of IP that MGM has, but if you're Amazon and you're in agreement 100% that consolidation and buying pre-existing IP is the trend, and what is out there left to buy, I don't see where Amazon went wrong in buying MGM. MGM was going to go out of business. Let's face facts. I mean, I can make all the jokes I want about Creed and Legally Blonde, but the fact of the matter is that through no fault of their own, whether they had hit after hit after hit regardless, the marketplace was changing so rapidly that eventually they were going to go out of business no matter what. Just the land was washing away out from under them. That's just a fact. So they needed a home. Amazon needed prefab content. Why wouldn't you do this? And I will give you the final word.
All right. I'm going to say a couple of things here, and
First of all, any major rebuttal to what I just said?
Not especially.
Okay.
My contention that most of this IP is more or less valueless, and which is not the same as absolutely valueless, but more or less valueless, I think stands. And I think most box office returns tend to support that. Not all, but most. That doesn't, to be clear, that also doesn't mean it is without value if we change context. Amazon wants stuff to fill out Amazon Prime. They got a bunch of that. Amazon wants to take a flyer, a $9 billion flyer, on being able to spin off something into spin off some of these IPs into something that people watch in 2022. Okay, it's their money to gamble with, not mine. I'm sure, given the sheer volume of humanity and man-hours that are going to be thrown into this, that something of quality will come out of it. It is a statistical near impossibility for everything they produce out of everything that they've bought to suck. Okay, fair. I'm willing to give all of that. I think they overpaid. I don't think they care, and which is fine and dandy. Overpaying is a metric determined purely by value and cost. And whatever extraneous value the buyer might see in something is entirely up to the buyer in that case. I agree with you that MGM was probably going to struggle. They were going to need some kind of partner. Even if they hadn't had, again, several money-losing or minimally profitable ventures over the last 5 years. But, again, there's... and at the end of this, I can only speak for myself. There's nothing in that catalog I'm looking forward to. I struggle to see how they would turn any of those into something I would be interested in, but I am just me. And that's all. Again, that's ultimately all I can speak for. I don't have a whole lot other than that. It's probably going to go through as a acquisitions deal. I don't necessarily see any reason why it shouldn't, but I am not in a position where my opinion on that subject matters.
As you were talking, and this will be the final thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to play the next segment. I think where you and I come into conflict in terms of ideological debate is, I think your first approach is, well, how does this relate to me? And my first approach is, well, how does this relate to the greater universe?
Fair enough.
So when you're making an argument like, this is worthless IP, this is a bad idea, because your instinctual sort of knee-jerk reaction is, well, none of this appeals to me. Well, and I'm looking at this. Go ahead. Sorry.
If I might extrapolate to look at the larger universe, I still struggle with it, but I see the potential. I suppose might be the way I would phrase how I look at this as it relates to, again, the larger kind of universe of entertainment consumers. I don't know how well a G.I. Joe cinematic attempt plays these days, but we're going to find out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Retaliation did not do well.
No, it did not.
Whether or not Snake Eyes might be able to rebound from that remains to be seen. But again, we will have actual data as far as that goes fairly shortly. I don't know how well a Legally Blonde franchise might work. I imagine poorly, because if for no other reason than the dumb blonde stereotype offending the woke mob.
Yeah, but they're not going to play it that way.
How else do you play it?
She's a big, strong woman with blonde hair who don't need no man.
Then she's not a dumb blonde as a lawyer, then there's nothing comedic about it.
Right. It's going to be, they slapped Legally Blonde on someone else's script about a lawyer.
Yeah, which is going to come down to, well, is that trend, for the record, in writing is a bad one.
Mm-hmm.
It tends not to work out, and I don't just mean in terms of my own personal entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you tend to get a bad product, generally, that people don't care about. So, again, I struggle to see the value in that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying I struggle to see it. The Wizard of Oz, again, they might be able to do something with it. In fact, again, if you throw enough monkeys at enough typewriters, you'll get something. And Amazon has enough money to fund 1 billion chimps at 1 billion typewriters trying to churn out the best thing ever written. But even extending out to the wider universe, I'm not as pessimistic as I am personally. I still struggle with parts of it, but we're going to have to kind of wait and see, and I have no doubt that something good at some point will come out of this. No doubt.
I think that's
the
what
law
got
of
my,
averages just mandates it.
I think that's what got my dander up when we were having that conversation, was just sort of instinctually thinking that they're going to produce enough broad, general entertainment that there will be more successes than misses, and especially if it's just geared towards streaming. It's hard for either you or me to determine what's a success in streaming and what isn't when that data isn't relatively available. Right.
I mean, the Nielsen people try to have a streaming component to their ratings now, and they're guessing. Those are shots in the dark. All the individual streaming companies have that data, and they share it on rare occasion when they can crow about it. If they're not crowing about it, it probably underperformed.
Right. Like, they were like, a zillion people watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm sure that was also spun. What's the new one now? 72 million people watched at least 2 minutes of Army of the Dead. Literally, that's the spin on that movie.
Well, good for them, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know what... So that's what I'm saying, like... you can't have a rational conversation about success in streaming when you don't have data to available to you, like we do with movie returns.
The sum total of what we can talk about with returns on investment and whatnot in streaming is largely our personal experience and entertainment value, which will vary wildly.
And varying wildly brings us to our next segment, the Critical Review.
Are you ready? I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
The Critical Review is brought to you by Grammarly. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes, and while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork to download Grammarly for free. All right, the critical consensus on the Rotten Tomatoes website was 45%, so this was, fairly rotten. And the audience score with 1,000+ ratings was 40%. So generally speaking, everyone hated it. The critical consensus, despite a commanding performance by Michael B. Jordan, shut up, Robert, Without Remorse fails to escape its outdated patriotic tropes. Yeah, the critically acclaimed guys kind of fell on that side of it's too jingoistic. And forced franchise play settings. The audience says it's as formulaic as it is implausible. Tom Clancy's Without Remorse delivers the bare minimum as an action thriller and will leave Clancy fans particularly disappointed. But hey, some people liked it. And let's hear what they had to say, huh?
Yeah, sure.
All right, you ready for this, Jeff?
Yeah, let's do it.
Vincent Schilling of Indian Country Today. Michael B. Jordan excels in his latest Tom Clancy thriller. Without Remorse is a welcome addition to the super spy soldier gone rogue universe.
No, it really isn't. No one cares about this. Michael B. Jordan doesn't excel. He's actually a big problem for this movie at various points in time.
I think that's like a way overstated like review. To be completely honest with you, I mean, I didn't think he was that great in the film.
Yeah, and no, this is not a welcome addition to the wider universe of Jason Bourne.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see them if they decided to continue to use him as that in that character or whatever. I don't know if the Tom Clancy, if there's multiple books in the series. I'm assuming there are.
Yeah,
so,
he's actually been tagged for a sequel for a Rainbow Six movie.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, honestly, I won't be like, dying or anything, like waiting for it to come out or whatever. I can tell you that right now.
Victor Lopez G. of Espinov.
Mark, and before you do this, I have bad news for you.
Okay.
Apparently Marvel has shifted their schedule.
I know, I saw. But it's like, for the unannounced Blade movie and unannounced Fantastic Four, I got to mess with my schedule later, but it's 2023. I don't care. Unless you're talking about something else.
Why did you schedule through 2023?
Because I'm an obsessive-compulsive nut.
No, it was just, that's it. That was just fairly new. That I wasn't sure if you'd seen it or not.
Yeah, I saw that earlier and just kind of went, okay, I gotta move some stuff that I've uploaded to Spreaker. But I have a year or two to do it, so it really doesn't matter. Victor Lopez G. of Espinov. A modern action cinema blast that does not deserve just to be buried under a streaming platform catalog.
You put this in major theater releases and it gets buried by everything else under the sun that came out 2 weeks ago, much less at the same time.
Okay. Lindsay Barr of Associated Press, top critic, Red Star. She gets paid for this, people. The good news is that Without Remorse is pretty great when it comes to action, and there's a lot of it.
That's it?
Yep. She earned her paycheck with that one.
There's not even a lot of action. That's just factually not true.
There isn't that much action. You're right completely. There really isn't that much action in the film. I mean, there was that one decent gun battle when they had the two snipers, but besides that, there really wasn't that much action.
Oh.
Blake,
there's that. She just like copy and pasted that from some other review and she went, yeah, sure, this will work.
Pin me, pay me. Blake Howard of Dark Horizons. Tom Clancy's Without Remorse is a brutal espionage actioner that sidesteps the world.
It's not brutal at all.
That sidesteps the world policing impulses of the source material. With the help of phenomenal casting and some taut dynamic action direction from Stefano Solima. Well, this person's not a huge fan of the U.S. government.
This person is a communist and a homosexual and bad at their job. I have no evidence about the first two claims, but I don't need any more about the third.
Susan Granger of SusanGranger.com. We haven't heard from good old Susan in a while, Robert.
Self-employed loser.
Michael B. Jordan emerges as a charismatic action hero in this suspenseful espionage thriller.
What is the benchmark for you people about charismatic action stars? How low does it go? You would have just been what? Over the freaking moon about... oh, God, why is his name escaping me?
Stephen Wright?
Oh, God. The actor. Transformers guy.
Oh,
The other one.
B. Shlomi. The one who's in the first three.
Yeah. Does he count as a charismatic action star by this metric?
I'm sure in some people's eyes, yes.
Oh, God.
Al Alexander of the Patriot Ledger. Jordan is a bona fide movie
Shia
star.
LaBeouf. That's it, Shia LaBeouf.
Jordan is a bona fide movie star with charisma, class, and enough acting chops to sell any flick. Even Creed
Why?
3. I just threw that in there. Even one as wrote as this one.
Can you get the man's dick out of your mouth for 5 minutes and actually think about the movie critically?
Jeez, man.
What happened to I don't curse and I judge all of you for doing so? What is happening to you tonight?
People filleting Michael B. Jordan for this performance is what's happening.
I love it. The ungluing of Robert Winfrey. Walter Charr, Film Freak Central. Without Remorse at least offers a medieval sense of chivalry to go with its blunt medieval instrument of war.
You just stumbled across medieval, figured out how to spell it, and wanted to use it a couple of times in a sentence?
I mean, I think the movie's okay and everything and whatnot. It's not anything like super great, but at the same time, these reviews are like glowing.
Yeah.
These people are bad at their jobs, and they should feel badly about doing them.
Jeff, this is why we do this bit. Because it's one thing to give a sober review of a movie, which, you know, it may be good, it may be bad, but at least be objective and sober. Then you get to some of these reviews, and it's like, oh my God! And they're just like falling all over themselves, like, no. Or they miss the point in one, and like, it goes both ways. The pendulum either swings to they're overtly positive, or they're missing the point and overtly negative. It's not a lot of middle ground here. Which is what I pride this podcast on, is being very middle ground and very sober and very objective. And get that dick out of your mouth, for God's sakes. Robert. Anupama Chopra of Film Companion, top critic, Red Star. She gets paid for this. Without Remorse is sleek, formulaic spectacle anchored by a charismatic, durable hero.
Why has durability become a good thing? I'll just throw that out there for a second. Why is it that every action hero that isn't a superhero gets shot 18 times, survives, and becomes a superhero?
I don't know, but Carlo Renata of the Curvy Film Critic, who we love to read on here. Oh, Jeff, wait till you get a load of this one. You ready?
Most definitely.
Light on dialogue and heavy on action doesn't negate from the fact that Michael B. Jordan is about to dethrone Tom Cruise as king of stunts. And action sequences as first Black John Clark in this popular Tom Clancy franchise.
That is so hilariously enough.
Tom Cruise hangs off of in-flight airplanes, motherfucker.
For real. I mean, seriously. That is like, what do they pay her?
They have to. She must be getting a kickback for that. That is an indefensibly ludicrous position. You must have suffered head trauma.
I love it. Another Michael B. Jordan booster. James Vernier of Boston Herald. Michael B. Jordan lends his intensity and credibility to a film that does not entirely deserve them. Action scenes are very well directed. Were you, did you have tomato soup in your eyes when you watched this?
This is not a person who has ever seen a well-directed action movie.
No, he has, because we've read him before.
Then this is an idiot.
Okay, well, that's entirely possible.
But there's no way. I almost can't believe that you could have sat through a competently directed action movie, looked at this, and gone, yes, these are equivalent.
Here's one for you, Jeff. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie or not, but Fred Topol of Showbiz Cheat Sheet. It's Steven Seagal's Hard to Kill. Only there's no acupuncture involved in John's
That's
rehab.
not an accurate comparison at all.
At all.
Oh my God. This asshole, Kevin Carr, fat guy at the movies. Holy cow, Robert. Every week we read him. And every week he couldn't be more wrong. Do you remember when we reviewed Atomic Blonde? Because I do. I was going through chemo at the time. I remember it distinctly. Do you remember?
That is a movie with some very well-directed action sequences.
Here we go! By the way, Jeff, if you haven't seen Atomic Blonde, you should. Are you aware of it?
I'm writing it down right now.
Okay. It's Charlize Theron beating the shit out of a lot of men across Europe.
Oh, I know what it is. Yes, I saw bits and pieces of it. I did.
Okay, yeah, it's worth sitting down and watching full way as Charlize Theron beats the shit out of Europe to the sounds of Depeche Mode. It's fantastic. It's also based on a comic book.
Well,
I like Depeche Mode.
How can you like Depeche Mode?
You know, who doesn't, right? Right?
I don't.
No one cares what you like or don't like.
That's
Kevin Carr, fat guy at the movies. This felt more like the size of Atomic Blonde without a naked Charlize Theron as compared to a Bond movie.
It's not trying to be either of those, you moron.
Oh my god, I
real.
want to beat this guy with a sock full of quarters.
I want to get a bunch of D-cell batteries, string them together, and whip him with, like, what the?
Let's
Anyone
not
who
quibble
knows-
over the weapon.
Anyone who knows this guy, I want you to find a fish. Go buy a headless salmon from your local grocery store. Find this man and beat him about the head and shoulders with it.
My god, Atomic Blonde had so much style and zest to it. This had none.
Atomic Blonde is
None.
also an espionage thriller. It is fundamentally about the spying. This is not at all about the spying. At all, at all. You moron.
Jeff, you were about to say something?
No, I just think it's that these are almost comical. I mean, just like the friggin' Michael B. Jordan tried to like cry or whatever during the movie. It's the same deal. Like it's just like a joke, basically. These people are like delusional.
Yes! And now you understand the bit. Jonathan W. Hickman, not that Jonathan Hickman, another Jonathan Hickman, of the New York Times Herald. Without Remorse is a straight-laced, square-jawed espionage actioner. There's fucking no espionage here! That features some effective grounded, bone-crunching sequences.
No.
Yeah, there is no espionage in the film.
Yeah.
And really, you, buddy, you and I have to have a conversation about how much damage that amount of C4 does if we want to talk about grounded reality.
Well,
Or-
there's a problem here. He doesn't know what the word espionage means.
That 100%, none of these people do. Espionage is about the act of spycraft, intelligence gathering, infiltration. This is straight up about Michael B. Jordan shooting people. Covert operations are not espionage. Morons.
Robert, for people who haven't heard the review in 10 words or less, in terms of an action movie, how was Wrath of Man?
In terms of purely an action movie,
Yeah.
pretty darn good, actually.
Good. Because Gregory Wakeman disagrees with you. The National, Gregory
wrong.
Wakeman of the National, UAE, the first 80 minutes of the film are so exhilarating that it is already bound to be remembered as one of the best action movies of the year.
It's not even one of the best action movies of the month. Not even close.
Seriously, go see Wrath of Man.
The entire heist sequence in Wrath of Man was better shot, tenser, and easier to follow than everything this movie tried to do.
Oliver Jones of Observer, top critic, speaking of filleting Michael B. Jordan,
Please.
with his outrageously articulated physique. You hotsy-totsy, Michael Jordan.
In fairness, the man's physique is an appropriate mix of steroids and gym time, sure.
We don't know if he uses steroids. Stop that.
Mark? No. You stop that. Every single one of them is. And I don't blame them and I don't care, but let's...
You don't
let's-
know that, and that's
Mark?
libel.
No, it's not. Because how is it libel? First of all, libel's print. Libel's
Yeah,
print.
it's the other
Second,
one.
it's not even slander.
That's the one.
It's not slander.
Okay. With his
Now, I'm not
outrageous...
I am not accusing them of anything illegal.
With
But
his
if you really think that somebody like Michael B. Jordan or anybody else
He eats his
could
spinach.
could in 8 weeks transform their physiques that radically without chemical use, I got beachfront property in Omaha to sell you.
You don't
Yeah.
know what he's racking at
I
the
don't-
gym, okay?
Look, he's in the gym. Of course he is. I could shoot steroids if I sit on my couch. They're not going to do anything for me.
Okay, can I read the
They're-
rest of this? We got
they're
literally as
all-
far as articulated physique, and you went into a tantrum.
This is about you saying, "How dare you accuse our vaunted
Stop saying
action
things you don't
hero."
have. Stop putting things out there in the world that you don't actually see with your own damn eyes.
You have not seen the reports. Everyone
Is a sex
And
pervert?
Well, that too. No, look, if you're Jason Momoa, yeah, you're on the juice.
And a sex pervert?
I don't know about his sexual life.
Well, that's the same stupid argument that we get from our friends that say everyone in Hollywood's a sex pervert. Did you see anything? No, but I read a thing on Reddit.
It's not on. No. This is not on Reddit. This is every personal trainer who's ever worked in Hollywood.
Okay.
They don't name names because they're under NDAs. But every
Christ.
single one of them is on something because they have to be to get camera ready in ridiculous amounts of time. You get to spend how much of this movie with your shirt off? Yeah, I'm going on the gear.
Well, I will not say such negative things about Michael B. Jordan unless I see it personally.
Whoa. Stop 1 second. Stop. How is it negative?
With his outrageously articulated physique and
stop.
Jesus
You brought
Christ.
this up. Answer the question. How is it negative?
I don't want to accuse somebody of taking a drug of any. That's not true. I accuse people of taking drugs all the time. Withdrawn, Your Honor. I'm
Look,
defeated. I got it. I withdrew
here's
my own stupid argument. Stop beating me.
Okay, this is not about you. Let me say this generally. When I say I don't care if they take steroids or not, I mean it. They're in the entertainment field. They have physical requirements to be met. If they are doing so legally under the guidance of their doctor, I could not possibly care less what they shoot themselves up with. Not one iota, and neither should you or anybody else. But for some reason, saying that that someone who has to get as ripped as Chris Hemsworth does on a ridiculous schedule, in addition to being in the gym as much as he is, because he does work, they all do, but I'm not going to pretend that looking like that is not the subject of chemical enhancement, severe dehydration on days you have to have your shirt off so your abs pop, and cinematic tricks. And again, I don't actually care. Neither should you. How about we destigmatize the appropriate use of steroids in a physical glamour competition?
You know, the irony of this conversation is I was the one on Ken Shamrock's side when he was touting the appropriate use of steroids under a doctor's care, and Scott Kachowski yelled at me.
Well, Kachowski was wrong about that one in that particular context. I don't care if professional wrestlers are on steroids.
We were talking about it on the 4-1 Ground and Pound show. All right, moving on. I'm not even going to finish reading the damn review now. Last one, because I think we've reached the end of our rope here. Let's see. Let's find a good one here. Stephanie Zasharek of Time Magazine, top critic. We like to read her.
Oh, Time.
It takes itself more seriously than it should, but you can take it with as much seriousness as you like. Personally, I advise little to none. How is that
a positive review?
Yeah.
I like that. That's a good. I think that's a pretty solid review.
I appreciate the sentiment there, actually, believe it or not, but I'm just curious how that turned out positive. Well, look, we got to an accurate review. Let's call it there.
Randy Myers of the San Jose Mercury News, top critic. By resurrecting Clancy...
Had to find one more.
By resurrecting Clancy's second-tier hero, Kelly, and casting Black Panther actor Jordan, Without Remorse shows improves on its source material and delivers a satisfying, sleek, and ultra-violent spy thriller. It's not a fucking spy thriller!
No.
One, not a spy thriller. Two, what Care Bears style media have you been consuming for your entire adult life to think this is ultra-violent?
Hey, this is the last one because I want to read your dad. But this is actually a... by the way, there are several people who I read, Jeff, who I've decided are related or married to Robert, just as an ongoing gag.
Apropos of nothing, but what Mark finds funny. Sure.
So Robert Winfrey's dad, Roger Moore of Movie Nation, The longer it goes on, the more over the top the set pieces get, and the more dated the geopolitics of it all seems. Aw.
No,
Who's
hang on.
mad at the U.S. now?
Actually, no. That's everything they talk about is fairly contemporary in that particular sense. And I can't speak to the source material updates, so. But no, the set pieces don't actually get bigger and more outrageous
All right.
at all.
No.
There's nothing outrageous here.
That'll wrap us up here for our review of Without Remorse. I want to thank Jeff and Robert for joining me on this late hour to talk about this and then have a sissy slap fight over whether or not a $1 trillion company should buy a $1 billion company. And then have an even sissier slap fight over whether or not Michael Jordan uses steroids.
For some reason, Mark deciding that he's suddenly anti-drug.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Then
And I
shut
believe
up.
I believe my record is sound on that.
Okay, then again, I have to ask, why do you care if actors use chemical enhancements?
I don't. That's not what the argument was. The argument was I just don't think in a public forum we should be pointing and yelling witch at people.
I'm not yelling. Okay, hold on. Again, better question. How is it negative that he does, assuming he does?
I mean, it does have a... Jeff,
It has a stupid, outdated
okay, to you...
connotation attached to it that
But-
I am trying.
I have
in
a
my
man on the
little
street
way
here I'd like to
break
talk
down.
to. I have a man on the street I'd like to talk to. Jeff, in a casual conversation, if you point at somebody and say that person does steroids, is that a positive or a negative or an ambivalent thing?
It's pretty negative. I mean, don't get me wrong. He is extremely friggin' ripped, like, without question. I mean, and I don't know, but at the same time, it's really hard to just be like, oh, well, he's on steroids. Like, I mean, there are people out there who do put the work in and everything and whatnot, like, genuinely.
Of course he puts the work in. Everyone
The
does.
argument, Robert, is whether or not the use of steroids still has a negative connotation
Well,
in
okay.
the general conversation amongst at least Americans.
Okay, I'm willing to stipulate that it does. How about we start destigmatizing that by not treating it as such?
You know what? That's fair. And if that's what's got your dander up, and you're contributing to the stigmatization of the thing that I defended many years ago, if defended the use
more
of
or
other
less,
drugs.
actually, yes.
Okay, I'm actually with you, and I withdrew an hour and a half ago about that. So anyway, we re-aired our, speaking of black guys using steroids, our review of Luke Cage Season 1. There, see, now I'm doing it. We reviewed Invincible Volume 2, 8 is Enough, Man of Steel by Brian Michael Bendis. Robert pushed me in the pool and took over Metal Hammer of Doom. We reviewed Galactic Crack and Starship Velociraptor, Castlevania Season 4, Invincible Season 1. We started a new boxing show. We're looking at the Four Kings of Boxing, Roberto
I meant
Duran.
to ask, what did you think about Invincible? I rather enjoyed it.
Listen to the review.
Give me a few 50 words or less. I will listen to the review later. I'm just curious.
I liked it. Wasn't what I expected. Believe it or not, because I had read the comic book first, and it was bloodier than the comic, so I was a little shocked by that, but not like unpleasantly shocked or anything. I liked what I watched. I thought they did a really good job with it, and I'm excited for the second season. So yeah, Four Kings of Boxing. Roberto Duran, who punched a horse and won a title by punching a guy in the dick. Did you know that, Jeff? Roberto Duran won his first title by punching a guy in the dick.
Yes, I didn't get it, that version of it, but like, yes, definitely.
Marvin Hagler, Thomas Hearns, and Sugar Ray Leonard, and we started off with Roberto Duran, as I just mentioned. We re-aired our Unsolved Mysteries, the Ultimate Warriors title run, in conjunction with not only the A&E biography, which aired this past Sunday, but the Dark Side of the Ring Ultimate Warrior episode, which aired on Thursday night. Today, prior to this recording, Cruella debuted in theaters, so we re-aired one of the movies that got this whole stupid trend started of turning Disney villains into anti-heroes in their own pictures. Our review of Maleficent from when that came out, yet another rock stupid movie. And tomorrow we've got a syndicated source material for What If Spider-Man Kept His Cosmic Powers. And Robert's Everyone Loves a Bad Guy is being re-aired. That whole series is coming back to the podcast, and we're starting with
Wildly
Disney
out of order.
Disney Villains Part 1. Part 2 will be the following Sunday. Next week, we're looking at all kinds of things related to Cruella and 101 Dalmatians, or Disney related at the very least. So Monday, we've got Disney Great Parodies Volume 1, Mickey's Inferno, which is based on Dante's Inferno, because why wouldn't you put Mickey Mouse in Dante's Inferno? We will have a review of Cruella. Robert, Jason, and Alexis will review A Quiet Place 2. And speaking of drugs, me and Jesse Starcher are going to review Bongzilla. Wisconsin, baby. Woo! Stoner metal, baby. On my birthday. 45 years old, reviewing stoner metal. Bongzilla. And then on Thursday, me and Chris Bailey and possibly Harry Broadhurst of the Kickoff will review AEW Double or Nothing. And myself and Sean Comer will put 101 Dalmatians on trial. And that is it for my plugs. Jeff, why don't you tell them about the MCU's Bleeding Edge? I know you just did a whole episode on Captain America.
Yes, we just did. We're doing an Infinity Saga review series, basically connected with the podcast of Champions. And essentially, we're just kind of rotating guests and our panel around and stuff like that and everything for each episode, and involving their whole squad on our shows. And so we're doing another one tomorrow morning, actually, believe it or not, at the crack of dawn at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time Zone. We're going to be doing Captain Marvel. It's the second episode of the series, just because that's the only time that I could put together to make it work with all the different people. The one guy's coming from the Netherlands, you know what I mean? And so bottom line, we'll be back at it again at 8:30 in the morning on the MCU's Bleeding Edge. And, of course, I'm on every platform. We're on every platform that there is, basically, under the MCU's Bleeding Edge. And, we did Captain America, the First Avenger, on Wednesday evening, and it was great. I mean, honestly, I hadn't watched it in a long time, and I really enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, I watched during the pandemic when The Avengers was re-released in theaters, at a time where nothing was being released in theaters, but they kept showing old movies. So I would take my kids to what theaters were open, and we saw Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I took them to go see The Goonies, and one of the ones that my daughter and I went to go see was The Avengers. And she was like, oh, and I had to show her at home show her Captain America, the First Avenger, so she would at least somewhat understand what was happening.
Yeah.
Robert, go ahead and do your plugs for your stuff.
Well, I normally host Damn You Hollywood, occasionally step aside, but Mark mentioned a few of the things we have upcoming. He forgot to mention tomorrow, Saturday, my one God-given Saturday off in any particular...
I didn't mention it because you said you didn't commit to it.
I said I'd do it.
Yeah, you were bitchy about it.
Well, of course I'm.
What Robert is talking about is our live coverage.
Surprising? I'm a little bit baffled by your being stumped by that. Mark and I will, in all probability, be doing a watch-along thing for Devin Haney and Jorge Linares.
Yes, sir.
Which will be coming your way tomorrow evening on DAZN.
Which rhymes with calzone.
I had to make sure you had space to get that in. I cover professional wrestling a few days a week in the Wrestling Zone of 411mania.com. AEW's Dark Elevation on Mondays. MLW, whatever they're doing, on Tuesdays. WWE SmackDown on Fridays. And I cover MMA in the MMA Zone when it happens to be happening. There's no MMA this Saturday, so I get it off. I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. Last week, we reviewed the event that happened and erroneously previewed one. We'll be previewing that this Sunday. We'll also be talking about some fights that got made and some news of the week. So we'll have stuff to talk about in addition to rehashing what a terrible, terrible card that is.
Have you been talking about Bellator's on Showtime?
A little bit.
I have them on my DVR, the ones that have aired so far, but I haven't been able to watch them yet. Anything good? Without giving it away?
Rumble Johnson's return actually winds up being pretty good. He doesn't fight Yoel Romero because of medical reasons.
Okay.
But that one's pretty good.
Did you talk about the Invicta show?
I don't talk about Invicta much.
I'm actually watching a documentary, Mark, and Robert, about Chris Claremont and his run with Marvel with the X-Men. Really interesting. Really interesting. I really
Where's that
enjoyed
at?
it. It's on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
I watched like the first hour of it. I've still got like another like 45 minutes to go.
All right, that is our review of Without Remorse and our coverage of the Amazon purchase, in theory, of MGM Studios. Jeff Sloboda will be back with us again, I'm sure. We'll figure out what he's going to review. And, of course, Robert and I. You can't get away from Robert and I. We are everywhere and everything. We are inevitable. Be well, be safe, and behave.